Welcome to Talk Advocacy to Me, the podcast that dives deep into the world of customer advocacy and loyalty. I'm your host, Liz Richardson, and I'm joined by my dynamic co-host, Deena Zenick. We're the co-founders of Captivate Collective, and we're here to spark your curiosity and fuel your passion for all things customer advocacy. Each episode, we tackle hot and pressing customer engagement topics for the advocurious to the seasoned pro. So let's dive in and talk advocacy. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Talk Advocacy to Me, where we talk about one specific question relating to the customer advocacy field and try to answer it, bringing in experts and guests from the field. I'm so excited to be here. I'm Liz Richardson. I'm your host, and with me, as always, is my partner in crime, Deena Zenick. And today we have our special guest who is, this is so funny. Kati Viscaino is what I was going to say. Is that how you say it, Kati?
That is correct.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
You got it
right. Awesome name, by the way. So Kati is someone I reached out to and asked to be on this episode because I thought it was just such an important topic as we get into award season. And that topic is, how can I get my award program application to stand out? And I think that's a really important one. We have learned so much judging our own award program, the CAP Awards, and Kati, from the submissions that we have seen from her and her team, she is a wonderful person to talk about this topic. Let me tell you a little bit about her before we get started. So Kati is the Associate Manager of Customer Advocacy at Trimble, where she helps manage the network, which is the name of her customer advocacy program, an online customer community. And she loves working with customers and building relationships, of course, which she should if she is in this field. Guess what? You're in the right field. Congratulations. And I think it's really interesting. You said you teach bar, and I used to be like a big bar person, and I fell off the wagon, and I'm really sad that I did. But you look like someone who would be a bar person. So that's awesome to meet you. Thank you so much for being on this call.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited.
So Kati, like I said, you and the Viewpoint Trimble team, were applicants for our award program, the CAP Awards, last year. Kati was also a winner of the CAP Awards for Life Cycle Advocacy last year. So congratulations, Kati, and Kathleen, I know, who is a huge part of that as well. So we want to give her a shout out. So tell us just a little bit about applying and winning, Kati. What was that like?
Yeah, I mean, it's always so exciting to win an award. I mean, I don't think we ever apply it expecting to win. It's always just that hope. So, you know, it's always an honor and a privilege, and we're always incredibly excited. But yeah, I mean, definitely a team effort. And thankfully this year we have 2 new members on our team. So we're excited to submit some new awards with some new people behind them for this year. But yeah, we can't wait. Awesome. But no, the application process was amazing. I mean, everything is always incredibly laid out and extremely clear. So yeah, I'm super excited.
Well, you hinted on something there, Kati, which is, it is a team effort because it can be a good amount of work, and you don't even know, like you said, you have no idea if you're going to win. You don't know what other kind of applications are coming in. And so I think maybe the first question we as a team here can try to answer is, why take the effort? Why apply for that award? So Kati, I'm going to start with you, but Deena, I want you to come at it from your point of view as someone who's also applied for awards in the past. So Kati, what's the impetus there?
Yeah, I think for us, our program, our organization is huge. We work for a very large organization, and especially over these past few years, we've been working hard to expand our community and our advocacy program across the Trimble construction division. And so, I mean, a huge driver for us to submit for awards is just to be able to better showcase our program, and also demonstrate to our leadership the value of our program. Winning these awards has really kind of opened up a new avenue for us to get our program in front of some of the higher ups and decision makers within our organization. So I mean that is a huge driver for our team, but it's also just kind of, I think, exciting to have the opportunity to showcase everything that we spend our time working on, and it's an opportunity to learn from others as well. I mean, I think after every awards program that we submit for, seeing the other applications and hearing others' experiences, we're able to take something away from that as well. So it's exciting and valuable to just be a part of kind of the process as a whole.
Well, and I think I mean, I love that you were authentic there. And it is validating. And sometimes we may get validation, of course, from the work that we're doing and we're seeing the results. Sometimes we'll get that validation internally as well from people seeing the good efforts and calling that out. But it is really validating to have other people outside of your organization say, "Oh, okay, yes, this across the industry is quality work." And getting that third party validation, I think, brings another level of feeling like I'm on the right track. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm innovative. I'm forging new paths. Mm-hmm. So I love that. And I think, there's nothing wrong with saying, wow, it feels validating to win an award. Deena, I know you have applied for awards and you are also behind the scenes on our award program. What's the impetus in your point of view?
Liz, could I talk about this and not share our origin story? How do I decouple these things? Because yes, while I have applied for awards, I've also not been selected as the winner several times for many awards, including the time that I really met Liz when she won an award that I was gunning for many years ago. Well, I guess about 12. Is it 12 years ago, 11 years ago? So I think another aspect of applying for awards, you touched on it briefly there, Kati, is around networking, is around organizing yourself around other people who are really at the top of their craft. And really good awards programs will always offer some sort of opportunity for you to not just see who the other winners are from a distance, but to somehow connect you with those other winners, because you're obviously all in a connected space in a community of practice. And when you can get the top people in a community of practice together, then great things happen.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, Deena, because I didn't
about you winning all of those awards.
That and the fact that yes, it was an award program that connected Deena and myself, and so seeing someone else in your field who is almost competitive, but like in the sense of we're both doing such great work and we both want to get recognized for that. And then let me see what you're doing. I mean, I want to know what you're doing. Yeah. So I think you both hit on that, and that's a really wonderful outcome for that awards program. And then I want to throw in from my point of view, when I won one of my first awards, it was really my boss wanted me to apply for that award because she had always wanted to win that award and had it. And so when we were able to win it, it was just such a great thing to be able to give that to your boss and her feel good about it, or him feel good about it. And I think that is also a wonderful play for you as well, to bring that they feel validated and seen as well because you're on their team. And so you are representing their work as well. And I think that's really great. And then last but not least, before we get off of why I threw this one out there earlier when I was talking to Kati, was, you know what, we don't really think about it this way, but when your advocacy program or customer engagement program wins an award, there is some clout and credibility to that for your members too. So they feel good when they see that visibility, that this is a great place to be. This is a top-notch way for this vendor to be interacting with me, and I'm a part of that. And I think you can leverage that too in attracting new members. Like, this is an award-winning program. Why would I not want to be part of this? So lots of good reasons, I think, to go for it, but it is no small undertaking. And so we're really here to talk about what are some of those best practices. And like I said, I invited Kati specifically because she and Kathleen over at Trimble had a really solid application when they applied to the CAP Awards this year. So much so that I just remember thinking, wow, these people put together a very good application. So I wanted to dig in with Kati on, what is your process for applying for awards?
Yeah, it's a it's a bit of a lengthy process. I think anytime we kind of start the awards application process, the first thing we always do is look at the categories, of course, and really pay attention to those descriptions. Because I think usually when we're reading those descriptions, it's pretty clear to us which categories we have a shot in and which categories we don't have a shot in. And that really helps kind of make our decision for us. Typically, we do apply for more than one category as well. So choosing those 2 or 3 categories that we feel confident in. Sometimes we start the application and it's just not going how we want it. So then we still have an application or 2 to kind of fall back on. But really focusing on those descriptions. And I think an important thing here too is to not be afraid to kind of ask for that clarification when it comes to descriptions. If you have any questions or unsure if your plan aligns with the description, I think it's important to kind of reach out, because that can really make or break your application right off the bat if your application doesn't align with the category you're applying for. And then
Kati, I'll interject there.
Yeah.
That is so true, because we literally, being on the back end and looking through their applications, we've read some applications. We're like, man, if they had just put this in this category, they would have had a shot at being a winner here. But it's not really what this specific category is about.
No, it's super important, I think, right off the bat to kind of make sure you're fully understanding what you're applying for. From there, we usually go back and pick a previous application actually to kind of use as a template. I found that this saves us a lot of time to not start from scratch for every single award that we apply for. And often I find that there are kind of bits and pieces that I'm able to reuse from previous applications, especially if it's a fairly recent application. I'm able to sometimes pull in examples, which again saves me time in this process. At that point, we usually meet as a team and begin to brainstorm. So look at our content calendar, at our planning documents, think back to the campaigns that we've run with other divisions within Trimble, kind of pull together this list of everything that we've accomplished typically in that previous year, and then begin to pick out kind of our favorite examples, the examples that we feel closely align with, again, the categories that we've chosen. And then once those examples are picked, we then go through and begin to pull out the qualitative and quantitative data that we want to support each of those examples. We don't typically use examples that we can't back up with numbers or quotes, testimonials, and whatnot. So that kind of sometimes narrows down those examples for us as well. And I think when pulling together an application, having both qualitative and quantitative data is going to be key. And a lot of times when I'm writing, I'm writing trying to talk about how great this example is or this program is, but I want to be able to prove it to the judges. I don't want to just be able to talk about it. I want to be able to prove it to them, that it has been successful, and that data usually helps me do that. So once all that's pulled together and it's written out, I send it to usually 1 or 2 people to review. One of those people is typically Kathleen, especially because she's close to the program. She's familiar with the network and our advocacy program as a whole. And so she's able to review it. She's always going back to that category, making sure that what I've written is on track with the description, because after hours of sitting there writing, sometimes I start to go off track and go down some rabbit holes. So she'll rein it back in for me. But I think it's also valuable to have her review it, because sometimes I've written something and she has a different perspective on that example and is able to, read it and say, why don't we take this example and take it in this direction? I think it'd be more valuable because of this. And so that's one reason why I think it's nice to have someone who is familiar with your community or your program review the application. But I also think that there's benefit in having someone who's not as close to the community review your application as well, because it's easy to write about something that you're familiar with and assume that everyone else is going to understand everything that you're talking about. But there are a lot of times where I've written an application and I send it to someone who's maybe not familiar with our community and is like, I don't understand this piece. And if they don't understand it, the judge probably isn't going to understand it. So getting those different perspectives and input, and just, basic copywriting, grammar edits as well, because again, it is a lengthy process and sometimes things just don't come out how you want them to. And having someone catch that is really nice. So that's typically it. And then, I usually export it multiple times, make sure the formatting looks good, do spell check and grammar check and all those things to make sure everything has been caught. And then I submit it and cross my fingers. If I mean, some supporting documents as well are super important. There have been applications where we've included screenshots in each individual section, so then judges can kind of have a visual example as they're reading about the example. But then there have been other applications like this one where we've kind of done those supporting documents or video screenshots, whatnot, off to the side.
Yes, and we're going to get into some of those tips, but to back up for a minute, so Kati just gave basically a methodology approach step by step. So if you're listening, I hope you were kind of jotting down. I think it's so great. I want to call out a couple things that I think people might skip in their process. So starting with the last point you said, I think people do not have other people review their applications. I think maybe half of people do. I think that can be seen or is evident, even in simple things that you said you pay attention to, like grammar, spelling. But more importantly, having someone read to say, okay, you said the application was about this, and these stats are really interesting and nice, but they don't really support your narrative for this category. I think that's so important. You don't want to muddy up the application by giving extraneous information that isn't really part of the story that you're trying to tell. I think it actually brings a bit of confusion or lack of clarity, and then it's not a home run in the same way it might have been if you just stuck to the narrative that you were trying to tell. So that's one thing I wanted to call out about that methodology that I think people might be skipping over. What do you think, Deena?
I would add just a couple of pro tips here. Having designed award programs, judged award programs, and now at Captivate, running an awards program. I think that the word narrative is really important, that you actually think about your application in terms of a narrative, like what is your hook? You have real people consuming your application at some point as it goes through the judging process. And how are you hooking that judge in to have some sort of a connection to what you're writing about? Sometimes applications are submitted not just for CAP Awards, but other programs that I've been a part of. It's just like, some bullet points that are really great stats, but it's the application itself is lacking that narrative from start to finish. Another item that you mentioned, Kati, is around the additional assets that you can sometimes you can upload videos or PDFs or PowerPoints, images, whatever it may be. If your application offers you the opportunity to upload additional assets, by golly, do it, because when it gets into the judging process, there will be applications that are quite robust and supported with other assets. And even if you have a good narrative and good stuff in your application, if it lacks that additional kind of firepower that the other applications have, you're being compared in relation to the other applicants in the category. So take advantage of every opportunity to showcase your story in different visual formats, video formats, whatever the application allows for.
Okay, so Deena's started us down the tips path. So let's jump into that. That's fine, Deena.
Great. Happy to help.
Yeah. So process, Kati, thank you for sharing that. And I think there's some important points in that process that were really good that you called out. But I do think story narrative overall, I'm not sure everyone thinks about their application as a story narrative. So I think that's a very important pro tip / process, which is how do I put together the story? And so jumping in, let's jump in about that idea of how do you stand out. And the way I think about this is, if you've ever put up a job post opening, and then you start to get all these applications coming in, it is so overwhelming for the recruiter or the hiring manager to sift through those applications and see and figure out the differentiators on their own, right? If you're just filling out the form, putting a resume, when there's a lot of volume, it is very hard to, after many, many application reviews, figure out what are the differentiators here. And I think you don't want to leave that work to that person who is having to wade through so many different applications. And that's why, when we talk about application tips, it's all about, how do I stand out? How do I make my application stand out? And so that's what we're here to talk about today, is how do I make my application stand out? So first of all, have a process, know what you're doing. To Deena's point, don't just put bullet points in the answers. It's probably not going to be enough. So let's talk about some of those pro tips that Kati, you and Kathleen did so well in your application last year. So let's talk about those supporting materials. What types of supporting materials did you include?
Yeah, I believe for this application, we just included a video. I believe it was a 15-minute video. And for the application, we were asked to include up to 5 examples. So rather than just submitting like 5 screenshots or 5, I believe that because we weren't necessarily supposed to include words with it, we were like, well, how do we take these examples and submit them without being able to explain like what they are? Mm-hmm. So again, we chose to submit in video form. So we took 15 minutes, picked our 5 favorite examples from our application, and showed it live. So we pulled up our community, we showed each of those 5 examples and talked our judges through our community, the examples, and just took the time to explain and highlight our supporting documents in a different way, I guess.
Which to me was brilliant. Seeing that, it was so brilliant, because it was, first of all, it does take, when you've read through 30 applications in a day and you finally get to a video, first of all, it just takes you out of what you've seen over and over. So you're already put in a new frame of reference. It might energize the judge to some degree, just to look at things a different way. But then it's also a nice workaround, like you said, Kati, where you really could put in a lot of information or supporting materials, because you're showing a video. I mean, you can screen share whatever you want when you're on a video. Yes. And it took a lot of the work off the judge. So what I was talking about, that not making the judge work so hard on the application, is you literally were like, just listen and we'll walk you through this whole entire application so you can fully understand where we think the differentiators and the good work is. So I thought it was really brilliant. And so I think another workaround, like you said, like if you only can upload so many documents and you can't label them necessarily except for the title of that document you're uploading, you could create a Word doc and put visuals in there and label the visuals. That would be another way I think you could get around that. And we saw many good applications that included strategy decks. So we could at least flip through a strategy deck, see screenshots and pictures. And the brilliant thing about that was a lot of people were reusing internal documents that they had created around their program, and then they just attached those to their application. But it really did help bring things to life in many cases. Deena, any other extra things you can think of? Because I mean, decks, strategy decks, screenshots, video.
Yeah, just like you tweet something there for me, Liz, about like when a judge is reviewing applications, the likelihood of yours being the first is very low. So what is that little injection of excitement? Like, go outside of the box, be a little more left field. Open your application with, here's the reason why I'm the winner. Just do something, that is going to help stand up your results. But, you can do a lot of things, but if your results, to take us back to the top of the conversation, you can have fancy videos, you can, think of interesting ways to tell the story, but if at the end of the day you don't have the results and you're not the right fit for the category, then no amount of bells and whistles are going to work. But bells and whistles can work to your advantage in the judging process.
It's interesting to me, having been doing this last few years. I mean, even like, here's my bullet stats. That's one way to put it in there. But here's my dashboard of campaign results isn't just another way to look at that. And we are human. And so when you see certain visuals presented a certain way, they land differently.
Mm-hmm.
It's really design to some degree. It's marketing. It's my, dare we say that? It's marketing. So yes, by all means, it's going to be very hard to stand out if there are 30 applications and you're one of 10 that doesn't have any supporting materials. That's a hard play. Kati, the other thing you touched on in your process was the qualitative with the quantitative.
Yes.
Examples and data. Tell me more about that qualitative.
Yeah. In most of our applications, we include quotes or testimonials from customers, but also from our internal stakeholders. So people from the divisions that we work with and collaborate with frequently. We've run activities in our program asking for customer feedback. So a lot of times we're able to kind of go into those and pull snippets of customer testimonials or quotes, sentences if here and there to include in our applications. And then often we have emails, or maybe we've reached out to someone even directly and asked for them to provide us with a few sentences on their experience working with our team, or to tell us how our community has helped benefit their team or their initiative. And then we find ways to work that into our application to again support our examples and just application as a whole.
Which seems like a no-brainer when you're submitting a customer advocacy or community board application, because we know the methodology to get buy-in or to breed authenticity would be to include that voice of the customer or that voice of the advocate, which there are internal advocates and external advocates, like you said. So embedding that, I think, brings a whole different level of credibility. Why do we think more people don't do this in applications? I'm curious, Deena.
Especially in our space, I don't know. It's a total show don't tell play. Like, I'm not just going to tell you that I'm good at advocacy. I'm actually going to demonstrate that in my application. Man, you could take that in so many different directions. You could inundate the awards program host with your advocates, sending in reference letters of support. Like, there's so much that you could do just pulling on your kind of the advocacy, pulling from your advocacy toolkit.
And I think that's a good one to pair with video, in my opinion, is I've been seeing reels of advocate testimonials, and that makes a wonderful asset. That is a lot of work. We know it's a lot of work, but if you're going for gold,
using it this year.
Katie's like, okay. I want to, one that just came to my head, and I do want to make sure I touch on, is this idea of stats. So we said stats are, so let's talk about the quantitative data. It's very, very important to have quantitative data, obviously. Some nice quotes are not going to cut it, although one powerful story can make a huge difference. But there needs to be impact proven and shown. I think, though, sometimes people throw a bunch of stats into an application, some really big percentages. So I'm just going to talk about percentages for a minute. Percentages are very, very relative. And I think, you have marketers looking, in this case, let's say for a customer marketing and advocacy space award, you have many of the people judging you will be marketers themselves, experts in the field. So we all understand that a percentage like 1,000% increase, that could mean one thing at one company and it would mean a very, very different thing at a large enterprise organization. So these are very different stories and hard to judge. So don't rely, in my advice or opinion is, you can throw all the percentages at me, but if you don't tell me kind of the baseline, if you're starting from 2 and you had 1,000% increase, I mean, it's still good. Let's say 100% increase. That is not, as big of a story. So people do try to sometimes hide impact within that percentage piece. I think benchmarks are very important to tell the whole story. So making sure that people understand where you started and then where you've landed. We get, or people get that, a smaller or newer program is not going to have the same big numbers as an enterprise program. I think the narrative is what we're saying. Like, what's the story of where you started and then how you got there? And that's the narrative you should be telling with benchmarking and stats as well. So I wanted to throw that in there before I forgot, because people love to throw stats in. You should, but think about the narrative with the stats as well.
Yeah, smart.
All right, I've got to hurry because I know we have so many recommendations here. Katie, you said one thing that you mentioned was getting input from internal stakeholders. So how do you go about that? What do you do?
I mean, we work with these stakeholders so frequently and so closely that I usually just ask in a meeting or send them an email. That's honestly typically how we go about that, just because we're in weekly meetings with these
Are
individuals.
you asking them what's the impact of this program on them? Is that the question that you're asking?
Yes, the impact that the program has on them, because we work closely with marketing, with sales, with events to promote their products, their campaigns, upcoming roadshows and whatnot. And so typically we're asking, how has our work in the network promoting these things, getting these campaigns and initiatives in front of customers, what's the impact been on your team as a result? Sometimes people also include, we've submitted applications for, like, Kathleen won Program Manager of the Year a few years ago. So when we reached out to internal stakeholders for her application, asking specifically what it was like working with her or working with our team. So it kind of differs depending on the application that we're submitting for. But yes, how our program has positively impacted them, or how working with our team specifically has helped lighten their load.
Great. So I think, again, that's just speaking to advocacy and having external voices tell the story, and not just relying on your word of how impactful this program was or these efforts were. These are all wonderful tips, and I hope everyone listening is like jotting them down and taking them to heart. They make a huge difference. But Katie, I mean, it is a lot of work. So let's not, if you're going to put in a really great application, it is time consuming. And I do want to be transparent and just ask you, like, okay, well, Katie, how much time does this typically take you?
Yeah, each application is probably 10 to 15 hours or so. And again, we usually submit more than one application. So it's definitely a time consuming process. If someone can pull together a stellar application in 1 to 2 hours, like I would like to know what the tips are. But that if we're going to put an application that we're proud of and that we hope to win, we definitely set aside and dedicate a large amount of time to really digging deep and pulling together all the information we need to submit a quality application.
Okay, so let's say you put in 12 hours in application, you did 3 categories, and you didn't win anything. What do you still get something out of it, Katie?
Oh, 100%. And there have been awards that we've submitted for and that we have not won. And I think it's still extremely validating and nice just to have this portfolio of everything that we have accomplished in the past year. It's helpful to see what we've created, and it's something to be proud of, even if there isn't an award to show for it. And as we chatted about at the beginning of this session, networking is always something that we
Mm-hmm.
gain from it. I mean, my network and community has greatly expanded since we've begun submitting for awards. I've met incredible people and had the opportunity to learn from lots of people. So there, I think there's always something to gain from submitting for an award, even if you don't win.
And like you mentioned at the front end, it's not like it's a one and done. I mean,
Oh
there
no.
are usually multiple industry awards. And so
Mhm.
you always have the chance to hone that award and to go take it elsewhere. And
Yes.
here is something I think people don't do. Um, if for some reason you thought you had a really good chance and your award and your application did not progress, maybe you didn't even make it to finalist, I think it's worthwhile if you feel you can and you have an open door there to go. Feel free to ask, like, hey, I'm just wondering about my application. What would have made it better? What was missing from it that the other finalists had that my application didn't have? It's a great learning experience as well to understand why your application maybe is not just popping out of the fold.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dina. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I agree. Depending on the scale of the awards program, you might not be able to get that feed back. And I mean, also just depending on the design of the awards program,
Mm-hmm.
you might not be able to get that feedback, but it never hurts to ask, especially if you really feel that you had a solid
Mm-hmm.
shot at it.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I do think I've had someone ask in the past, and with Cap Awards, we don't make any of the final decisions anyway, so it's nice to be able to say, well, that wasn't my decision, but you can look at that application for them and just say, okay, well, looking at all the applications in here, yours was really light on supporting materials, or yours was
Mm-hmm.
really light on stats. Or these people really brought in the voice of the customer into their application. So you will often be able to get a nugget that you're able to use next time moving forward.
Yeah.
There was a lot there, but Katie, I think you did a great job just kind of
Thank you.
breaking it apart and
Mm-hmm.
telling folks how you approach it, the work and effort, being honest and real about the work and effort involved to get that really top-notch application, but all the value you can get out of the not just winning or being a finalist, but the whole process itself.
Well, thank you. No, I was
Yeah.
happy to share.
Thank
Yeah,
you
this
so
is
much
great.
for being on here. Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Deena, for your insights. And so now, everyone on there, be brave, go for it, block out the time so that you're not just like, I'll fit it in where I can. That's not a winning formula. And yeah, be brave, go for it. There's many. If you're a customer marketing and advocacy practitioner in the space, there's many industry awards where there's at least 3 or 4. I think that you can apply to. So, go for it and then hone and grow and learn as you go. Thank you
Yeah.
so much, Katie,
Thanks,
for
Katie.
sharing with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
All
All
right,
right, bye
ladies.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.